We will now move to the Q&A. So let's make sure we know. By the way, if you have any questions, please do share them in the chat. We'd love to hear more about them. And let's get our panelists around. So I have two lovely panelists here with me in the room. So Eero and Maarit are over here. And I believe we're going to also have some panelists coming in from abroad. So let's see how it goes. But let's start off with some interesting discussions. So, Eero, you talked a lot about your wonderful PlanetNet, if I'm correct. That's how we pronounce it.
Planet, yeah.
Planet, yeah. So, you have been using the tool to pick up things such as biodiversity and nature impacts. But what else are you doing in addition to, let's say, other climate impacts? What else can we pick up and what else can we learn from your solutions?
Well, in terms of impacts, we're definitely looking into a variety of potential other impacts. Certainly a really big one everywhere in the world is climate adaptation, climate risk assessment. We're looking into planning economics. It's obviously an interest how expensive it is to create different areas. What is the revenue potential in different ways of developing a city? There's so many examples. There's transportation-related impacts outside of just climate. And I think the big point is that our current customers are primarily municipalities, municipalities of all sizes, from the larger cities to very small municipalities. So I think the main point there is that the capabilities that the municipality themselves has vary tremendously. We have seen some extremely interesting and powerful tools used by relatively large cities today, but we have to keep in mind that we also have very small municipalities with minimal resources that also need to get up to speed with all of this thinking.
And I think it's also worth considering that, while you have big municipalities with perhaps some funding and the tools, they can't afford to let these smaller ones, drop out because, again, these are adjoining municipalities.
Exactly.
Where, again, some of their citizens reside and do stuff. Let's see, because thank you, by the way, for sending in questions. And, of course, the more, the merrier. Maarit, let me pick up. There's been a very interesting question, and many people have been talking about it quite a bit. Again, can you give some concrete examples of citizen engagement and co-creation? And in particular, from the context of smart cities, any lessons learned or tips for others to follow? I know it's a broad question, but and I know you can talk hours about this. Yes.
How long time do I have?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, there are, I said, over 15,000 concrete examples where engagement has been meaningful and it has been done digitally, and there has been a purpose and idea why to do that. But from a smart city point of view, I could take, for example, an example from city of Vantaa and city of Espoo, which are near here. I think what I feel is nice that when cities are using these kinds of digital platforms, they also think a little bit beyond that. They are thinking that how, if we gather the data, because it's always happening in projects. So how then, if we have multiple projects running and we are collecting, for example, now data throughout this project, can we somehow then, store the data somewhere so that it can be also used in other projects? So it's not just per project and we are running from project to project. So I think it's very nice to see those projects where the data has been taken seriously and the tools have been taken seriously and given a thought how to apply and use it then also beyond the project when the projects end. That's one example.
And I'm sure, if they want more, they can just visit your website and they'll find much more. They can reach out to you later.
Yes, please do.
Robert, let me come to you. You shared some very interesting perspectives from Malmo. And I think one of the things we'd like to know more about is digital sovereignty and governance. And of course, with Malmo, trying to make sure that it owns the data, has a relative degree of openness, is able to share it. Can you give us perhaps some examples on how this is done? And what would be the best governance model in terms of openness, security, or cross-sectoral sharing? Question, I know.
Yeah. Thank you for that quite simple and easily answered question. Well, it is a huge topic. Typically, in each and every city and each department and corporation within the city owns their own business development and by that their own digitalization, and that means that you have a lot of different decision makers going forward doing different projects. And typically, at least in Sweden, we have a local, what do you call it? You can make your own decisions on how to make things happen. And I think that we are lacking sort of both from a national standpoint, but also from a municipal standpoint, policy making on how to go about and do things, which means that we end up with 1,000 ways of doing things, which is has its upsides because we get things done, but it's problematic, and that's why I try to make the case that it's a sound and good decision to invest in your own digital capability, which is a struggle. The struggle is real.
Yeah. I'd like to now move to Via Europa. So one Jonas Bolin was with us in the presentation. So, and you will be, answering the question on behalf of your other colleague. I believe that was Johan Birgersson. Am I correct? Yes, wonderful.
That's correct.
So, Jonas, now you talked, your colleague actually, the other Jonas, talked a lot about the old electricity transmission system and challenges with the distribution grid. So not allowing, connectivity with green energy. And he talked about, how can we use internetification of energy distribution. So if you could tell us perhaps some examples you may have from Sweden where this has been done and, what were the bottlenecks?
Absolutely. So nice to meet you, everyone, first of all. But so we have, from Via Europa's point of view as a company, bringing this as a product to market, we've been able to do this together in Lund, together with LKF, the municipal housing company in Lund. So there's a technical proof of concept up and running in a couple of their buildings where energy is being produced in one building, stored in another building, and shared freely between those buildings without incurring transmissions fees from the legacy grid. So there's a dedicated DC cable running between those buildings, and the energy is shared between those, even though it's two different corporate entities owning those buildings. So that's an example of where that has been happening. We have another 7 projects underway in Sweden alone, in different stages of the adoption life cycle, anywhere from city level district planning to cable laying and digging in a couple of properties in Lund and Örebro in Sweden. So there's significant motion on this in that sense.
That's very interesting. And if I may just, continue a bit forward with you also on this, is that, of course, we have the technical barriers and enablers, but I'm more interested at the moment in what are certain non-technical barriers, regulations, incentives, ownership models, procurement. So if you can enlighten us on those.
So I think the way I would look at it is most of those barriers are easily solvable. Procurement, governance models, all of that is fairly straightforward. The thing that presents a real challenge when it is not in place is legislation. So the ability to build parallel, infrastructure overbuild, building parallel grids, that's been effectively removed through the internal market directive from EU. The implementation in Sweden allows us to build parallel electrical grids around energy communities, which is what is being leveraged here to make this move quickly. And I think so the local legislation in any market matters a lot for how quickly this can be moved. And the second solve on a legislative level is allowing the rent or for property owners to actually rent spare capacity or the capacity of existing electricity grid at the distribution level, property level, because that would enable something like the technology we're bringing to be rolled out very quickly, massively parallel, without having to, dig in the ground or bore new holes through buildings. It's just getting the network equipment in place, electrical distribution equipment in place without actual construction. So that would be a massive unlock.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. Jörgen, if I come to you, first of all, we've received lots of positive feedback on the great work you're doing for Umea in general. And what we'd like to pick up on, because you gave us examples on how you're contributing towards a circular economy, industrial symbiosis, and these are not usually, in the preferred domains of energy companies per se. So, we'd be interested in knowing, what has really been your role in these types of projects, and of course, how do you, as an energy company, benefit from these? Because of course, you need to have some benefit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you. Yes, a good question. Since we are owned by the municipality to 100%, we have quite different demands from our owners in that sense that we should help the green transition of the region, as I mentioned. And this puts forth a different approach than many other utilities, which may be profit-driven more. Of course, we need to have a healthy bottom line also, but not in the same ballpark as private utilities. We work a lot with the city transition. It's in this city framework for the net zero cities, for the climate city work. So we have had and have projects around the transition roadmaps and also the technical roadmaps. So we really try to work more closely together. And also this site we are currently focusing on, this Umeå Industrial Park, is the kind of epicenter where we want to really put this in practice. So and the thing around now, the market around e-fuels and that kind of stuff that we're planning to do is a bit dodgy due to the global kind of challenges and different aspects. So yeah, the market timing is essential there. But basically, we have the business models, and also we have the kind of partners at place, many of them anyway. So we're pretty confident it will roll out this thing with the shrimp and the prawn and the fish. That's more local, so that we are doing, and also this around this e-fuels, they are a bit more sketchy in that sense due to market values and that sort of things. But otherwise, we work always on this improving district heating and reducing the climate impact. So that's nothing new, really.
If I may just continue with you, because you also raised the Umeå Eco-Industrial Park and the circularity projects. So they're based on a lot of system-level thinking, and what we would be curious to learn about is, what types of data sharing or partnership models have been important to make this industrial symbiosis work, actually, in practice.
Yes, that's one of our Achilles heel, you could say. We are right now starting up the kind of data sharing models, and that's been we have a quite ancient legacy on the data side, all the actors, all the partners involved, but we got financing now actually from a Horizon project, so we will sink our teeth into more get detailed data. We will build kind of a business model and a tool, kind of a business model tool for making the energy transition and value transition through the partners. So that's starting right now, actually. It's a new project, so yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful here. Eero, let me get back to you. Again, a very interesting question coming up. So the way you're working with Planect, you offer a lot of consistency and speed across plan assessment. I think you showed that very nicely in the infographic in the beginning. But the question is that, how do you ensure method transparency and ensure, there is no black box critique?
Yep.
But most importantly, because many of the results which may come out, they may actually be like politically sensitive. So how do you deal with that? I know it's a tricky one.
It's not such a tricky one.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So in terms of our users, my message is always, if our user information that we're providing within the software is not thorough enough, let us know, and we'll make it more thorough. This is a very complex set of data, a complex analysis is being conducted. So it is not easy to grasp what's going on. We are constantly looking into how to make the calculation process, the background information easier to understand. So from that standpoint, I think we are doing our best to avoid the black box idea. And then in terms of the kind of political sensitivity, in terms of municipalities using our software, of course, it's up to them how they want to use the data. So whether it's kind of like within the planning department alone, is it the city at large, is it also the public, and they can make case by case choices in terms of what kind of information they're sharing. But I have to say, there's a really funny comment I got from one city after presenting our solution. This person said like, all right, well, now we just need to decide whether we want such good information.
Oh, wow. Interesting, of course.
Meaning exactly, I think, what you're describing here, that sometimes some of this information can be politically sensitive.
Robert, if I come back to you, because you were talking a lot about the digital work being done within Malmö. I think that was really nice and beautiful. But the key question is that in today's modern world, where a lot of the data is either controlled through different IoT systems, is stored on sometimes local, sometimes international clouds. Lots of, let's say, foreign companies, the bigger giants, having access to your data. What does it mean for us, and how can we control and regulate that, especially in the global demographics we see now? Because, some users are actually having certain reluctancies coming in that, well, all of our data is controlled by this major global provider. So they have access to everything. So, how do we as, if I would dare even say the word Europeans or even nationals of particular countries, ensure that our data is safe and secure and only used for purposes intended to?
Well, first off, I'd like to yet another pattern that I'm noticing when I'm out working here in Malmö, but also with other municipalities when we're interacting, is that the different line managers and so forth are becoming quite fed up of doing again another procurement process where they're buying a system with proprietary solutions. And also, we are in the municipalities recruiting and establishing skills in terms of information governance and how to manage data. So these are things going on right now within the municipalities, which is a great process. The challenge here, especially in terms of the climate challenges, is the time frame, the speed of things moving forward. Because when you can really make a lasting standpoint is when you are designing your new solution or when you're procuring your new solution. But we are getting quite good at that within the municipalities, making sure that we actually control and own the data, or at least have a solid modern API to get the data and work with it. But this is a slow process. Like the systems have a 5-year span or an 8-year span. So I'm a bit more pessimistic about the time frame, especially since in a municipal or a public organization we are heavily understaffed in terms of digital competences. So I'm not sure that answered your question, but we are rapidly becoming better in managing data as a whole.
Yes, and I mean, I work with a lot of cities myself. I've been doing that for close or more than 2 decades. And, you know, it's always a challenge. Sometimes we're tied in with very old, heavily invested legacy systems. Can we dare to unbreak them? Because they, again, contain a lot of logic. So, yes, and of course, funding is always a problem. Needless to say that. Marit, let me come to you. So, a very interesting question that, you know, you talked about path dependency and getting users locked in. So again, you know, they're happy and engaged and everything is happening. But what happens if, for example, through user co-creation, we're going to develop something new, bring something new into the picture for people who are already using some existing tool? Do you see any resistance to change or adopting something totally different and new?
You mean now, for example, for an urban planner in a city?
Yes, yes.
I mean, that's only a good thing if they want to test and learn and
Yes.
try new
But are they
tools.
willing to do that, you know, based on your
It
users?
depends.
Yeah,
It depends.
right.
Yeah, I already in my dissertation, I talk about super planners
Of
who
course.
are motivated and keen to learn and try. So I think it really varies a lot.
Yep.
And I think it's not only about the persons, but it's also the organization, how open the organization is to test and try. So there's a lot of variation, of course. Ooh, yeah,
That's very true. There is, yes.
how to,
Yes.
did I answer to your question?
No, that is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And Jonas, let me come to you. I mean, again, a very interesting question actually coming in for you is that, you know, there is curiosity in that how in practice does the current grid, for example, block others putting energy onto the grid? And how does the new energy net solution of yours solve certain practical issues? Of course, would it be a new grid to be installed, larger scale, smaller scale, and how quickly can we make it happen? For example, in a neighborhood with, let's say, 100 houses.
Yeah. All right. So to the first question, what is the sort of by which mechanisms is renewable energy and battery installments blocked? In most countries, DSOs, so the power grid operators in the local area, are need to give you permission in order to be able to install something that connects to the grid. And because the transformer stations in most places aren't able to handle the capacity of the actual solar and batteries that could have been installed, that limits what you can install. And that's somewhere roughly around 20% on a national average in the EU, right? So that is a massive challenge to a green transition. What we're doing with EnergyNet and our energy routers, which are physical devices that are placed behind the meter inside a building, is that there's a galvanic separation guaranteeing that no energy is exported that isn't meant to be exported. And that through digital control, like with routers for energy, for communication, right? But this is for energy. And that means that you can install all the solar and the batteries that you would like to install that is financially viable for you, but you wouldn't, nothing gets exported unless you have configured it to do so, and the DSO has accepted that that would be exported. So that's a fundamental difference in architecture. And that galvanic separation in turn then allows you to connect to any other building in your neighborhood that has the same equipment, which puts us in the question of, do we build a new grid, right? Yes, but only between those buildings. It doesn't have to be a new grid in the country. It just needs to be behind that meter and behind all the other meters, forming a local smart microgrid that allows you to roll this out. And the speed by which this can be rolled out, the projects we're doing now takes somewhere between 3 to 6 months to actually deploy. We're on a learning curve, so we're seeing the speed pick up. We're using off-the-shelf components to actually build these energy routers with some custom software, and that allows us to roll out things very, very, very quickly. And we expect this to accelerate over time. And we're doing retrofits, meaning existing buildings, and also working on projects with new production, in which it's not really a case of how quickly it can be rolled out. It's just how quickly can they build it, and we will put the routers in.
And maybe, you know, one final question to you and Robert also, because you are dealing a lot with data and stuff, that, you know, now we see the proliferation of AI everywhere. So from a user perspective, city organizational perspective, and of course we realize that AI use consumes a lot of electricity. So what do you see as mechanisms to make sure that we don't have an explosion of electricity consumption?
Right. So I'm going to answer this really quickly and then hand over to Robert, because we may have different perspectives. But our perspective is one, when we place an energy router in the building, we're using that building or property as the logical limit. And it means the property owner has control of the infrastructure in the building. They have control of the data in that building. It's their data. So the same way Robert would like it to be their data, that's what happens in our model. But that also allows us to put AI compute in buildings which the property owner has control over, right? That doesn't mean they should be building data centers distributed in their buildings, but it adds a different capability. And for the data center part specifically, with energy routers, you can actually have a coexistence between a data center and, say, single-family households or multifamily households adjacent to those data centers in a way which actually allows you to leverage the different load profiles of those types of buildings and businesses.
Yeah.
Well, first off, there is an AI hype. Doesn't go an hour, between the times I hear the business shouting AI from some perspective. But first off, what we could do as a society is to, limit the Netflix streaming by 5%, and then this isn't an issue. But we haven't really solved that question yet. At least in the public sector, we are still struggling with data to be readily available for actually using AI to some extent. We are in Sweden working with Svea GPT, the national initiative with AI, which is very promising, and they are running on carbon neutral data centers when delivering that. But in the long run, of course, we will see, the data center usage will explode eventually. So I don't really know. That's the bottom line here.
Yeah.
Less Netflix.
Yes, that's a good one. Maybe to wrap up, a final shot at all of you, Eero, Maarit, Robert, Jörgen, Jonas. What would be the top 2, don't mention many more, top 2 technological innovations do you see, based on your work, which you believe are going to contribute towards positive climate change?
I am going to not answer your question.
Okay.
I think we don't have time to wait for technological innovations. We need technological innovation, but in the meantime, we have to do everything else at the same time. So we need, for example, less car dependency. It's a smart idea. We need more green in cities. It's a smart idea. So we do all of the other things, and then we look for those technological innovations, which we certainly need.
Maarit, go ahead.
Well, I feel that we have to speed up and think a little bit more closely how to inform people better about the upcoming changes and needs in the future. I think we, like experts know, but people don't know. And if we want to make these changes happen, we need to involve them, and there we need to move faster. I think technology, we have it. There is no need for new technology, but it's the willingness to be more open and make the change happen. I don't know, was that 2 or 1 or more?
Oh, it's fine. Robert, go ahead.
Well, I think that the European Union concept of data spaces is something that eventually will revolutionary how we actually are able to consume data and share data between those, different organizations. And I think the innovation pops up when you actually have quality data at hand, being able to do these decisions. And then, of course, leveraging smart algorithms to look at that data. That's short.
Oh, wonderful. Jörgen, go ahead.
Yes, well, I come from the energy side, so it's one obvious way to go with that's carbon capture and storage. We have a lot of technology up and the knowledge around it also. The market prerequisitions need to be met and it needs to be financed, I'm afraid, from the public in some way. And the EU is putting forth some efforts around that, but it's or again, the global market and the global is not there, unfortunately yet, but it had capability to reduce the whole climate impact of traffic and all that kind of stuff in just one big blow, you know, in Sweden alone. It's quite possible. Yeah.
Jonas.
Yeah, so I agree with most of you that everything we need may already be in place, and it may just be a matter of distribution. So the future is already here; it's just unevenly distributed. I do think there is one space where there is significant room for innovation, which is power electronics, because the foundation of what we're doing is power electronics, and what we think is capable of happening in power electronics in the lines of what happened with the processor all that time ago. If we can get that to happen again, we have fantastic things ahead of us.
Thank you so much. I'd like to now thank the panelists. Of course, thank you so much for your time, for your presentations, and for being here and sharing these wonderful thoughts, despite maybe some tricky questions, dare I say. But to wrap up, I'd like to share some key takeaways which we've gathered. This has been done by wonderful people like my colleague Aapo Huovila, who was combining different thoughts from the presentations, from the panel discussions, and of course all the chats you were providing. So here are some of our takeaways as we see them. We need to see a big move from ambitions to capabilities. So cities as innovation ecosystems and, dare I say, even change engines. Now, what does this mean? How do we make sure that climate neutrality is not just a target? You know, we set different targets, but it's more of a long-term capability. Continuously building, bringing in the governance, the data skills, collaboration, and of course, continuous learning. How can we ensure that we have cities where climate, biodiversity, economy, and well-being, they intersect? So again, this is bringing in this innovation ecosystem as a concept, the city being at the core. And of course, we realize that digitalization is not the means, but a very, very strong enabler. We see, of course, digital twins, shared data platforms, architectures, evidence-based actions. But now there's also more talk going on about operational digital twins. So again, digital twins who are not just a replica of the physical in terms of dimensions or properties, but who are tuned to be able to actually act and behave as the real. So we can actually run different types of scenarios on them. We also see a huge transformation in energy systems. But again, over here, it's essential that we have this interoperability and integration. How do we combine electrification with district heating, with circular energy, and of course, industrial symbiosis across different sectors? And let's, of course, not forget about participation and trust, because they are things which actually accelerate transition. Many societies, in particular the Nordics, we're based on a climate of trust. Trust is one of the core pillars of society. So we need that to ensure we have the proper citizen engagement, transparency, and of course, shared understanding, which brings in legitimacy and actually enhances implementation capacity. And of course, it makes things happen. If we move forward, we also see that acceleration of change and making things happen only works if we act and do together. We have seen how cities, they're learning from each other, either in national context or even global context. So from, let's say, Sweden, Finland scale to European scale, and increasingly global scale. We're also, luckily, seeing a huge shift from silo projects to system-level portfolios. We are combining mitigation with adaptation. Biodiversity is at the core now. Land use planning is coming in. You have mobility, you have energy. And then we're also finally, I mean, this has been a dream for many years, investing in shared capabilities as opposed to one-off solutions. And this brings in things like data sovereignty, analytical capabilities, interoperable platforms, and so much more. And again, trying to get to a place where we're not reliant on specific or locked-in solutions, but different mechanisms where we can bring in the data, connect it meaningfully from multiple domains, and actually have actionable intelligence on which to make informed decisions. We also see strengthening of multi-level and cross-border collaborations. We're seeing that already. And most importantly, measuring actually what matters. And we heard earlier on that, it's the question which matters, not necessarily the answer. So how do we ask the right questions? Because they actually help us define and develop those KPIs which actually make a difference. So we measure for a purpose, not for the sake of measuring. And then, of course, we've seen wonderful pilots, how we go from just a pilot to scaling up and replication. So in a nutshell, that summarizes some of our key findings. Just to let you know, we'd be more than happy to stay in connection with you. Here are some contact information. So contact my colleague Aapo Huovila, who was up front, for any contact information. You may also ask our speakers. And of course, if you would like to discuss more opportunities with us at VTT on how we could help you in your journey towards climate adaptation, mitigation, and of course, transformation to a much better world. Thank you so much from our behalf over here in the studio. Big thanks to Pulp Studio who've organized this. My colleagues, Aapo Huovila, Sanna Kekkalainen, she's sitting in the background, refusing to show her face because she has been doing a lot of work. And of course, many others at IET and RISA and everything. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful spring. It's a time to smile and of course, a time to look forward to change. Thank you so much and looking forward to seeing you soon. And of course, the material will be sent to you. Thank you and goodbye.